like a blank canvas and hand it over to a land planner. And God bless, I love land planners, but they're land planners. And say, here, design me a project, and leave them to their own device. I want you to know there are still people stupid enough with their money that do that, but not too often. Used to be a lot of that. So today, before you turn the canvas over to the land planner, you would have done your due diligence of researching the market demographics. You would have had an engineer walk the land. You would have had a hydrologist walk the land. You would have identified some of the wetland. So you then, all the things you want to look, you then go to the land planner and say, okay, here are the constraints of the project. Here are our development objectives. Here's who we think is going to live here and work here and everything. Now cut me up a land plan with streets and everything. See, make this work. So, you can take it up to entitlement and say, I got to get out of here. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm going to flip this land. I put a lot of value in this land. I'm going to go do another raw piece of land. Or you can say, I'm going to continue wanting to be the developer. I'm going to hire civil engineers, contractors and everything. We're going to design the land, we're going to design the streets and the infrastructure, we're going to do all that. And then I'm going to sell the land. And I'm going to sell the land to home builders, to office developers, to warehouse developers and everything. So, and then I'm going to get out. So a land developer, if you're in that area, all the way from raw land, you can be engaged all the way to the last sale of the last deed of that property. Or you can jump off anywhere along the line that there's a new value increase to the land and you say, oh, let's get out of here. And so you can work for yourself or for an organization that has a philosophy of going from here to here, or a company that goes from here to here. In my opinion, because I'm biased, this is the most exciting area of real estate. Why? Because every single campus is different. Every single piece of land is different. Every market is different. Every set of zoning is different. Every constraint that government can think of is different. The challenges are unbelievable, but it's high risk, but high reward. High reward. Developers go broke all the time, but they come right back. They're like resilient, they're like cats, they're back on their feet and do it again because you don't get it right every time. And so there's an old cliche of, there's three things in life you want to be. You want to be the first son, you want to be the second wife, and you want to be the third developer. Okay. And there's a lot of truth to that. So, for those of you that want to be in the, in a land development thing, that's the other thing, of course, is pretty. Now we're narrowing down into like a silo. Is home building. So, what does a home builder do? Now, a home builder might do some of this. Might buy land that's only partially developed. It says, I'll finish developing the lots. I'll finish putting in the infrastructure and I'll finish grading the lot and everything. But the home builder is really a home builder. Either he's building single-family homes, or she's building single-family homes, or she's building townhouses or condominiums. They're all in the same category. They're all home builders. And also in the home building category are rental housing, because it's all the same products. It just takes different sizes, different forms. But at the end of the day, you're creating shelter. Shelter, that's the key word. Human beings need shelter. It rains, it snows, it gets cold, it gets hot. The human species can't live outdoors without shelter. It's absolutely essential for survival. So that's that process. Office development, even narrower. It can take the form of an office park, can take the form of high skyscraper, and at a different point. It could be on top of residential, or it could be under residential. but it's office space. And now office space, as we got a little glimpse of today, is taking all kinds of new forms. The office space allocation is changing. Years ago, we used to allocate about 350 to 375 square feet of space to each employee. Today, they're down under 100 square feet. I mean, many new advanced organizations, particularly in the tech field, don't even have walls. I went to some high-tech buildings in Silicon Valley. The president of the company, the guy who's already worth $1 billion, is sitting in a cubicle, or sitting at a round table with, you know, with like 15 computers around him, screens in it, and he's talking to all the other people who work for him. And here's a guy, the billionaire, sitting next to the guy, a young person who's making $60,000 a year. And that's the office space. There's going to be more and more of that. So if I was going to go look for a job in the office market, I would want to drill into the soul of my boss or the person I'm going to work for to see, is this gal, is this guy really wired to what our industry really is and becoming? Or does he just want to build the same old product that everybody built, that nobody's going to use? I mean, half the towers in the United States. First of all, we've only built about 10 or 20 office towers in the United States in the last 10 years. I don't know if you know that. You see a couple of cranes downtown Miami? That's an oddity in the United States. There's no towers going up. We built too much office in the past. Many people in the office space, as we call it, in the industry are saying, we're going to need these things in the future? You know, it's like, okay, we're downtown San Francisco, hot as hell. I mean, it's the hottest market in the United States. Or we're at 55th Street in Manhattan. Terrific, terrific. But I can tell you, if you're on the south side of St. Louis, you don't need another office space there for the next 50 years. They have plenty. They still have 15 to 20% vacancy, and it's going to be that way for years. And as the world keeps changing, and you're paying attention to that world, you don't want to go work for somebody that's going down a road they can't come back from. So if I can just digress for a moment, if you got a job, or you're changing jobs, or you're looking for a job, you, particularly with the MSRED after your name, you have every right to ask that employer every sensible question you're entitled to ask. And if they don't want you to ask those questions, or they think that's disturbing to them, get out of there. That's not the place you want to work. You want to work for people that have the same curiosity they do, and you do. That they have the same concerns. You want to be on that train that's leaving the station and you want to be on. So that's a little side note. And I've hired hundreds and thousands of people in my life. And I think of all the mistakes I made and all of the people I was attracted to for all the wrong reasons. When I think back of all the ones that really were great employees and great working partners with me, they gave me the hardest time.
Really?
They gave me the hardest time, they drilled me, and you know what? I learned the hard way to listen to these people. Because the most brilliant leader in the world, you've probably heard this a million times, hires people that are better than themselves. That's the secret to getting people to buy in, give them a piece of the action, show them respect, and get the hell out of their way. It is amazing what the average human being is capable of. If you just, now, does that mean you give them the keys to the store? Of course not. But the point is, if you feel every day when you're going to work that you're not part of the problem, but you're part of the solution, you know what? I suspect you like going to work. But when you get up in the morning, you say, God damn, another day. Damn. I just don't want to go see that guy. I just don't. You know what? That situation is not going to get better.
No.
you're disillusioning yourself thinking that some miraculous thing is going to happen and you're going to break out of this problem. Yeah.
Looking back at house development, home building,
Yeah.
I'll keep myself tonight if I don't ask you this. Say I'm your mentee.
You what?
Say I'm your mentee,
Yeah.
and I'll finish the program, just about graduating from the program. I don't want to be somebody's employee.
Yeah.
I don't need income
Yeah.
to live on, to take care of my daily expenses. And I want to have my first project, a small project.
Right.
How would you advise me to get started on that first project?
Good question. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to run your own company. You want to
Start small.
always start small, but not so small that, yeah. I mean, you have to be stretching somewhat. Okay. The key thing is, even though you're small, hook up with somebody that's very smart, that you can learn from in the first year or two. Best way to do that is to have a partnership with a small home builder who's successful. Bring to them, say, look, I'll bring some money to the deal, I'll bring sweat, I'll bring work, I'll bring this, I want to learn from you. Let's go out, let's go build 30 houses together and let's do this together. You will learn more in that year or two and make less mistakes in the future not doing that. If you don't do that, you might as well go to Vegas. I'm serious. Because it's just going to be pure luck if you get it right, because you don't know anything. It's admitting that you don't know anything and that you've got to learn. And it doesn't make any difference whether you work for Pulte Homes or Lennar Homes, or you work for ABC Builder, or you work for yourself. You need basic information and knowledge to succeed. And unfortunately, this program is not going to give you that. This is going to teach you all the fundamentals and all the things you should be aware of that exist and so forth. But the actual test, the acid test of your success is going out and doing it. So, and of course, you'll get, if you have money to invest in it, you'll get more respect, you'll get a bigger piece of the pie, you'll have more to say in the business and so forth. But just make sure you're with people that are a safety net for you, and you can learn, so that maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, with something you feel comfortable enough, not completely comfortable, but comfortable enough to do it on your own.
It's a joint venture.
Joint venture is usually the best way to go. Retail is the same as office, in a state of flux. I mean, I know a great number of people who are very, very, very invested in retail, all the way from small little strip shopping centers up to gigantic malls. And we closed 100 malls in the United States last year. 100. And I don't know how many we're going to close this year, because the internet and E-Trade is eating away at the way we used to retail. And you people are different. You're different from the previous generation and the previous generation for that. You understand, when the first mall was built, that we call a mall, was actually built back in the 20s in St. Louis. And it was just an exception. But the first mall after World War II was built out on Long Island, called Roosevelt Field. It was such an astonishing thing to see that people came from all over the world to go see it. And if you saw it today, saw the pictures, you'd go, what? That's nothing. It's just a bunch of buildings and stores. Yeah, but no one ever put all that together before. So then the malls got more and more sophisticated, but they got enclosed. What do I mean by that? All the walls on a mall are sealed. Everything faces inward. There's no sense of space, there's no sense of the environment. And today, the last 10 years in this country, the most successful rehabs or the most successful new malls are open outdoor experience. You walk among trees and flowers to get from this cluster of stores to this cluster of stores. And so you put some life, vitality into it. But what stores are we going to need in the future? Macy's just announced they're closing 80 stores. Now, that sounds terrible for Macy's. Actually, it's brilliant. They're closing all stores that have less than 80,000 feet, or 70,000 feet, I'm sorry. So all these little stores that they built, like there's one up in City Place in West Palm, 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 40,000 feet. I mean, they make no sense. They just don't make any sense. You can't keep enough stock because there's not enough space. And the idea is that we want to give people what they call physical gratification. What is that? You saw it on that futuristic thing, where the Louis Vuitton bag came down, and you almost want to grab it because you got the thing on, but you can't. So you can see it, you can turn it over, you can twist it, you can do everything, you can open it, you can do whatever you want on that screen, but you can't touch it and feel it. And that's physical gratification. So the retailers for years thought that we have to have, at a minimum, physical gratification in order to also have e-trade. But it turned out that, what do you put in the store? If you have 30 different jackets to sell, you know, and you have them all on the internet, which 5 are you going to hang in the store? So it's crazy. So that's just like a side story. So the point is that retail, and of course then you have Walmart, who's struggling significantly now because of several problems. Let me go back here. I don't. Sometimes I get so caught up in my own trivia that I lose myself. A very famous guy years ago taught in graduate schools in NYU, and his name was Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker was like the guru of graduate schools back when I was a student. And if you were in business school, you read Peter Drucker's books. He was the Moses, he was the God of everybody. He was brilliant. And one of the things that, I'm paraphrasing, Peter Drucker said, the average capitalistic company without dramatic change going on constantly cannot survive more than 20 or 25 years. Think about it. Even in your young ages, think about all the companies that have gone away. You don't remember them, but think about the ones that have gone away. They haven't kept up with change, and they just got left behind. There's a famous story. Back in the early 80s or mid 80s, Encyclopedia Britannica. You know, does everybody know what that is?
Yeah.
I know. But you know, my mother took a second job just so she can buy my brother and I a set of Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, that was the complete household, and that was the best thing a parent can do. Okay. So that company did very well over the years, and in the early 80s, they were rocking and rolling. They expanded globally, they were printing in different languages and a whole bunch of things. And there was a board of directors meeting, and of course this is folklore by now, but I want to get the point across. One of the directors brought this young guy in and said, this young man says he can put all our books on one of these, and he was holding up a floppy disk. And because you know what a floppy disk is? I don't know, I've got 5 gigabytes on a little thing this big, so I don't know, what a floppy disk is. Anyway, I don't think a floppy disk could hold 200 megabytes. I don't know, there was nothing. So anyway, he says, he can put it, and all these directors would, oh, come on. People have to buy these books. They're not going to not buy these books. So I continued Britannica filed bankruptcy 7 years later because it was too late. Now, there is a form of a company around, but it's just shallow death. So there's been numerous companies, Xerox, I can go on and on, auto companies and everything, because they didn't keep up. So the point is that unless you're with an organization, unless you're changing constantly, Peter Drucker says you're not going to survive, and he's right. He's not. I mean, but, so you have Walmart today, biggest private employer in the world. In some states, Walmart employs more people than that state government does. But their model, their business model is to go get product built in China and the Philippines and Indonesia and wherever, and get real borderline crap built and bring it to America and aim it at the lower class, poor people in America, and give them a chance to own this stuff. But knowing it's not good quality or anything like that. And it was a big need in the marketplace. It worked. It worked. And they didn't care about quality, they didn't care about whether they had a top brand. They were filling a need in the marketplace. That's okay. But the point is that eventually the marketplace wakes up and says, wait a minute. I don't want this level of goods anymore. I want a better level of goods. And so there was a pushback. Walmart started feeling it about 5 years ago. Then the employees started pushing back. And the employees started saying, wait a minute, just because you sell this stuff cheap, that doesn't mean you got to treat me cheap. Yeah. So all of a sudden Walmart's got that problem. And then China gets into trouble. And today factories are closing down all over China. Not that they're going to go broke, but they got big problems, big problems. And so here's Walmart scratching their heads, owned by the Walton family, which is the richest family in the United States. Every member of the Walton family is worth $30 billion. And they're scratching their heads in Arkansas, where they come from, saying, so finally, for those, you know, I'm not asking you people, you shouldn't be paying attention to stuff every day like I do, because I got nothing else to do but to read the Wall Street Journal every day. You got a lot more important things to do. They fired a whole bunch of senior management, got a new president and so forth. The family finally realized our model, our paradigm is not going to work, it's not sustainable. We can't stay Walmart. And now they're going to go into urban areas, they're going to build Walmarts in Manhattan, and so forth. So they might have caught themselves in time. But why isn't other retail? Then you got Costco, a retail genius of a company. Their earnings have been up every year for 25 years now. They got it pinned down. I mean, now, does that mean they don't have to change? Sure they have to change, and they will. But the same two guys who started the company are still running the company. And every year, Costco is always in the top 5 best companies to work for in America. So I think they're so successful is because of their employees. Their employees are proud of what they do, and they get great benefits, and they're part of it. So maybe I digressed a little bit. So that's another area. Industrial is industrial. Industrial are warehouses, R&D facilities, research and development facilities, storage. They can be located independently. They can be located, a lot of them are located around airports in the United States. This is a huge area of the real estate industry. Huge. And by the way, the most stable. The most stable. Not never. I don't remember any time when the industrial sector of real estate was in trouble. There's always demand for industrial space. One of the reasons is when we did all that zoning segregation I talked about, they left very little land zoned for industrial. So if you go like west of Miami International Airport, there's all this industrial. We're running out of land there. Industrial land right now in Hialeah and in that area up there is a huge premium, huge. But this is very straightforward. It has limitations of size and scale. There's nothing of real creativity to it. It's pretty cookie cutter. I mean, there's some new methodology of gravity feed, but it's nothing great. But the people who do industrial developments have done very well in life and continue to. I mean, industrial buildings today are selling at 3 caps, 4 caps, 5 caps. Just really terrific. This one is I want to really talk to you about. What is the capital markets? And what effect do they have on your life? They have everything on your life. The capital markets are banks, equity funds, private, public equity funds, private investment funds, family office money, insurance companies, sovereign nation funds. It's the capital that drives every aspect of real estate, drives every one of these. And you cannot survive either as an entrepreneur or working for somebody or an organization, cannot get by without adequate capital. And capital today is in a great quandary. The world is filled with money. There are trillions and trillions, and that number is pretty big, by the way, a trillion, of dollars and euros and Swiss francs and so forth sitting on the sidelines doing nothing and earning no money. Earning no money. If you are in Japan today and you're a fund, you have to pay a bank to keep your money in the bank. Because the banks can't afford to keep your money unless you pay them for their costs, because the banks can't get rid of it. There's talk in Japan, because Japan is such a nation of savers. The average Japanese person saves more than any other person on earth, that they're thinking of doing this to regular folks. That's how much money, as an example, there is in the world. There's over $4 trillion on Wall Street sitting in money market funds that earn no interest, or 1/8 of 1%. If you want a loan today, they'll tell you the store's open, they'll tell you the open sign is lit, the shingle's out. Let me tell you, they're only lending money to people who don't need it. Very few exceptions. My doctor tells me a story the other day. I mean, this is it. Oh, you know, this isn't market research. This is just a story. And he says, I'm there because I'm a patient, but he is more concerned. He wants to know why he can't get a mortgage. So, and the God knows what he makes. He's got to make $300,000–400,000 a year, maybe more now. Anyway, make a quick story. He tells me that he's engaged, getting married, and he and his fiancée are buying a house. And I would imagine it's a high-priced home because he's talking about a jumbo mortgage. He said, we went in to look for a jumbo mortgage. And he says, so I told him everything about me. I'm divorced, I got this, I got alimony, I got child support, I got this. But I want to marry this new woman. I wish I had met her 20 years ago and all this stuff. So his fiancée, being an honest person, I guess that she is, tells the bank, the application, that she bought a piece of farmland from her parents. Whatever reason they did that, tax reasons, estate planning, God only knows, and signed a note where they would pay, she would pay her parents, P&I, every month for the next 10 years. And so she shows them the note, and the bank says to her, we want you to prove to us that you wrote a check every month. We want to see 24 copies of checks. And she said, well, I didn't pay them every month. My mother and father. I wrote them a check every 3 months, but I paid them for everything. Nope, turned them down. They went to 3 banks and they got turned down for the same reason 3 times. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is what underwriting is all about today in the banks of America. Because see, banks don't want to be banks. Congress and the administration want them to only be banks. Banks want to be in all the other businesses of banking. And so the government is saying, no, you guys got to be banks, sell all these other businesses. So there's this great conflict going on. So let's get back to the capital markets. Where do you fit in the capital markets? You fit either one place or another, and there's no in between. You're either on the side of the table where you need the money, or you're on the side of the table where you are the money. But you say, wait a minute, I've got an MSRED degree. It says real estate development. What the hell would I be doing working in the capital markets? Well, take that to another logical step. If you were the capital markets, if you were Goldman Sachs, or you were JP Morgan, or you were Blackstone, or one of the big funds, or anything, and a real estate project came in and wants to borrow $1 billion, or $500 million, or whatever. Goldman Sachs has to turn to someone to say, should we make this loan? No. What's this loan all about? We can't believe the developer, for Christ's sake. I mean, he's a developer. I mean, he's going to try to slip something by us. I mean, not that he's a crook or anything, but he's going to push the limits. We need somebody very smart here working with us next to the partners in Goldman Sachs. Well, who do you think they hire?
An underwriter.
They hire people with MSRED degrees. They hire MBAs with real estate degrees. They're filled with them. And guess what happens to those people? They work on projects. They work on projects. And then they get promoted if they survive. Because Goldman Sachs works you about 18 hours a day. And if you stay around and work long enough, and soon you're on the deal side, and you're not only doing the due diligence, and you're not only doing the workup, and you're not only now doing the negotiating, you're actually participating in the deal itself. And guess what Goldman Sachs does to those people? Lends them the money to be partners. Lends money to their own employees to be partners. You know what the average partner net worth is? Over $300 million. Many of them came out of real estate. Now, let's go to a bank. Bank has got a big loan department. Don't you think that big banks, other banks, don't have real estate people working for them? Telling them what to do and what not to do? I worked for a company called American Capital. We bought and sold savings and loan banks during the 80s. I was in charge of all real estate. I spent more time watching the banks they were buying than I spent watching my development companies that we had in there, that I had people, we were building condominiums, we were doing land development, everything. I almost had no time to look after them. I had to spend so much time on the bank side because we were buying so many S&Ls so quick. I was running around the country looking at portfolios and giving opinions and all that. Those deals were all rested on the intellect of the real estate people, not the bankers. Not the bankers. So there's a lot of money to be made on the capital market side. And they're always looking for people. Now, are you going to get in Goldman Sachs? No. No, you're not. I mean, I couldn't get it going. Nobody, because
We
they
ain't gonna be
target.
level nothing.
I don't want to.
We can't get going.
I don't want to pick on Goldman.
What am I here for?
But you got to deal with reality. They took in 1,500 interns this summer. 1,500 in their New York office tower for graduate school interns or undergraduate interns. They will hire maybe 30 or 40 of them at best. The number of people looking for jobs right out of graduate school and or undergraduate school for Goldman Sachs is about 5,000 to 7,000 a year applications. They hire a couple hundred. So don't feel bad if Goldman Sachs doesn't hire you. I'm only using them as an illustration. There are thousands of funds. Thousands. There are Chinese companies, Japanese companies, Indian companies. I mean, in the United States, looking for talented people. I've got friends that spent 5 years in Paris and 7 years in London and so forth, working for the capital markets on the real estate side. Yeah.
Why are our foreign companies looking for employees in the United States?
Because we have the most
We have the capital.
trained, educated, it's attitude, it's a whole bunch of things, it's your culture.
Work ethic.
You come from a society of risk takers, whether you like it or not. Even people who are conservative are considered, in this country, are considered risk takers to the Europeans. They have no guts. No, they look at the problems they have all the time. Look at the euro. The whole European Union right now doesn't even know what the hell it is. So they're not going to collapse or anything. But look at. But by the way, Goldman Sachs. We'll go back to them for a moment. They hire foreign students. It isn't that it's all one way. So I'm just trying to point out to you that this is an industry that is so big and so broad that if you knew what I'm saying, fine, I apologize because I don't know what you know and what you don't know, so I'm giving you the best I got. But the point is that have a very open mind about how diverse and how many opportunities there are in real estate that almost in every case are very rewarding. Either through a good solid job with a good paycheck, or if you have the courage and the fire in the belly to be a risk taker, there's opportunities eventually to be a partner, to be in a joint venture, to be, even have the capacity to do your own deals. And was there one more there? Oh, and there's people like me today. When you're in this long enough and you still got blood running through your veins, you do have an opportunity to help other people do any of these things. Okay, and I just mentioned this, some of the students before. There's a good opportunity. There's a good likelihood that all of you are going to live to 80 and 90 years old, maybe 100. A lot of you are going to live to 100. And I am very optimistic that you're going to live to 80, 90, 100 in a way more healthier way than there is today. Because for a lot of you, we're talking 50, 60 years out. The question becomes, and I've participated in some seminars on this subject, if the average person in the future, let's say my grandkids' kids, or somebody like that, if they're going to live to 120, like the cover of National Geographic's was, should you have the same job for 90 years? I mean, some people want to start, should you be married to the same person for 100 years? I mean, 50% of marriages fail. 50% of marriages fail in divorce now within 5 or 7 years. So, what chances? So the point is that it's obviously going to lead to a lot of colossal social changes and attitudes as people live longer on a healthy frame. So there's a very good opportunity. You're going to have 2 or 3 lives. 2 or 3 lives, 2 or 3, you know, you're reading more and more about people just dropping everything and putting a knapsack on their back or whatever, and you're just going to go look at the mountains somewhere or doing something different. Do you know that in Aspen, Colorado, very wealthy town, very wealthy, there are 25 major capital market funds working out of single-family houses in Aspen, Colorado. The guys running and the gals running those funds never even leave their Colorado mountain homes, and are controlling billions of dollars. They used to do that in New York. They used to do that in San Francisco. So I don't have to, with technology, I don't have to do that anymore. Who cares where I'm at? When I became a consultant in 1993, I said, oh, well, I'm a consultant. I didn't even set out to be one, but I was one. I went off and I rented an office in one of these buildings that has all the different offices, and you have a central desk there and conference. I'm sitting there one day, I'm all by myself. I mean, it's like a closet. And I said, what am I doing here? Does anybody really care if I'm working out of my house? Of course not. So I moved, I have a sizable house. I took one of the bedrooms, turned it into an office, turned it into a high-tech room, hired people, said, give me one of these and one of these and one of these. And for the last 17, 18 years or whatever, I've been running my consulting business out of that room. I'll tell you a quick little anecdote. I become a consultant accidentally because I had no intention of being a consultant. In fact, I had no intention of staying in real estate, to be honest with you. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I'm a consultant, so I said to my wife, I need things. She says, what do you mean, what are things? I said, I need a stapler, I need pens and felt pens, and I don't have anything, you know? So she said, well, come on. I said, where are we going? She said, we're going down the street here on Biscayne Boulevard, going to Office Max. I think it was Office Max, Office Depot, one of the two. So I get in, I walk in there, and I look around, and I said, oh, this is where they went to get all this stuff. Because when you're the president of the company or something like that, you know, you just go down the hall and there's a little file cabinet, you take whatever you need and you just go. So that was a learning curve for me that day. But, so, let me quickly go through this. If you're a land development, these are, by the way, if you want, I could send you these slides. The first thing on any land development is due diligence, and what you're looking for is what we call the go, no-go decision. Every single investment in land should be aiming at a go, no-go decision. And well, what makes a go, no-go decision? Well, the people sit down that's going to make the investment, the capital markets guy, the developer, whoever, and everything says, okay, this project's only 10 acres, so we're not going to go crazy with due diligence. We don't have to find out the world about it. We need to find out this, this, and this. And if we get there and we get that information, we'll decide whether we're going to go or no go. On the other end of the spectrum, let's say it's a very, very big project. I worked on a project in Santa Barbara, California for 3 years with my partner in California, and the land was owned by an oil company. 1,900 acres in an oil field. You want to talk about insanity. We're in California, the toughest entitlement state in the world, and we're going to try to convince them to do a spread out master plan community among all the oil wells. So the partners in this said, this is a big investment. If we go forward with this, we could be out $350 million before we turn our cash flow around. High water mark was going to be about 300 million plus. We want to know everything we could possibly know about this project before no-go, go and no-go. So my partner and I ran a due diligence team of 30 people, consultants from all walks of life. We spent $14 million on due diligence, because that's what the investors wanted. They felt it was like writing an insurance check, because this was a crazy project, but it would have been magnificent. We never got it approved. It was the government in Santa Barbara turned on us. It's a long story. Anyway, but the point is, I'm trying to make is that we looked at financial structure, market research, surveys, closed rent. These are all the things that have to be worked on. Wetlands, animal species, clean air, clean water, all these different things. Traffic studies, infrastructure, civil engineer, hydrology. Hydrology is so critical in Florida. It's all about water. Where does water go? Where does it stay? How do we use it? We have a major water problem in Florida. We either have too much in some places and we don't have enough in others. Now you're hearing about all the floods that are coming and the icebergs are melting, and before you know it, all of Miami Beach is going to be underwater. Don't believe it. If you know anything about the Earth, it's been here 3 billion years. It's been flooding and melting. You know that 30,000 years ago, there was no ice on the North Pole. None. When the Vikings first got to Greenland around 800 AD, you ever ask why they call it Greenland? It was green. So I'm not saying the ice isn't melting. It will melt. Chicago had 10,000 feet of ice on top of it about 100,000 years ago. It was the Ice Age. That ice cut and made the Appalachian Mountains and so forth. This Earth has been going through this with and without us. The time human beings have been on this planet is this small compared to the whole life cycle of this planet. So this excitement about we have to fix Earth in our lifetime is just absurd. Now, could we clean up the air better? Of course. We don't want to bathe. We don't want to, breathe bad air. We don't want to drink bad water. Of course we want to fix all these things. We want to make it better for our kids and our grandkids and all that stuff. I'm not arguing that. It's saying that all of this is being caused by man is what gets this crazy. If we would stop this nonsense, we'd go to work on this and probably collectively do a much better job on this subject. But now you got a bunch of pig-headed people on. So, Miami Beach has been flooding at king tide every year that I've been living here. And they say it goes back hundreds of years. Every October, this section of the Atlantic Ocean rises. I don't know why. Something where the moon is and this is and everything. I used to have a condo up in Ormond Beach. I did a lot of building up in Daytona Beach and Ormond Beach. And every October, same thing. This great, great beach would disappear. The water would come right up to the dunes, and by December or January, it would be all cleaned out to be like a whole new beach, and like the cycle starts all over again. And that happened every single year that I lived there. So the problem with Miami Beach they had the worst stormwater system known to man. And if you've been to Miami Beach in the last 2-3 years, Walton Road has been a disaster because they're finally putting pipes in the ground to handle a lot of this stormwater. So the point is that those are the kind of things when you're developing land, you got to deal with all these different people. This is critical for all due diligence. If I ask you, what is your business? What is your business? What does that mean? Now, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. What?
Building structures, enclosed, envelopes for.
What are you building? Why are you building it? Who are you building it for?
Building.
Okay. I'm not picking on you. I'm just trying to- when I want to ask that question, what is my business? I have a very simple answer, what all of you, what your business is. And I don't care, by the way, I don't care which one of these you're in. Your business is this simple. You recognize needs in the marketplace and you successfully fill those needs. That's your business. Don't more complicated than that. If there are needs for land, you go out and develop land and fill that need. If there's a need for homes, you go out and build houses. If there's a need for retail, you do. If there is no need, remember the movie Field of Dreams? What was the famous line from that, you know?
Build it and they will come.
Right.
It's not true.
Without market research, they won't come. You'll build it, but they won't come. So, here again, you don't want to work for an organization, or you don't want to be part of a project that you've got something at stake and something at risk that you don't know why you're building and who you're building it for, and whether or not the need exists. When I do strategic planning, one of the ways I start off sometimes with a company or an individual, whatever, you say, how do you get started doing strategic planning? Where do you even begin? Well, I didn't make this up, I learned this from somebody else. You ask 3 questions. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Second question is, why do I want to be there? And the third question is, how am I going to get there? Now, simple questions, complicated answers. Complicated answers. But if you stay within the guidelines of those questions, you'll probably come out with a strategic plan that has a good chance to succeed. Because in the process of asking those questions and getting into those questions, you're going to determine what your strengths and weaknesses are. You're going to discover and identify your constraints. You're going to identify things in the marketplace that need to be, and that's why you want to be there. And why 5 years? Because most capital market money runs out in 5 years. They won't let you keep it for more than 5 years. There are some exceptions to that, but 5 years is usually the horizon on capital equity money. They usually want all their money back and a preferred return on their money within 5 years. Because they want an IRR that's going to be in at least 2 digits. They'll tell you they want 20% IRR, but they know they're never going to get it. So if they got 12 or 14% IRR, they'll be thrilled. Have you guys done IRR calculations yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
What if your community has a 20 or 30-year horizon of planning?
You got to recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to take the loan out the door and bring it back in again. But then it's easy. If you were successful those first 5 years, they'll line up for you for money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your experience with deals, you do all this market research ahead of time and you come up with the IRR. This is going to be a great project. So how many times after the fact did your IRR come out, you know, above or below or right even with what you expected?
It's a great question. There's a gray area of constant gray area of who to believe. Like right now, the business news, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times are filled with stories about a lot of the IPOs in Silicon Valley have used fake numbers. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa. In our need for greed, in our need for money, we believed these financial projections. We didn't even question them. And it looks now like a whole bunch of the crazy IPOs of Silicon Valley are imploding. Never gonna make their objectives. But getting back to your question, to be more precise, the point is that you have a good chance at a reasonable yield. In other words, the real yield world today is somewhere in the 8 to 13% range. Okay, that would be, I think most conservative capital markets guys and gals would say, if I had a 3-year, 4-year look-back IRR that fell around 12%, I'd be thrilled. In 2005, it was in the mid-20s. It was part of the hype. It was part of the make-believe.
Get rich quick.
There's a guy named Sam Zell, very, very famous developer, investor, controversial guy, outspoken, uses foul words, everything, but very respected in America. And about 3 or 4 years ago, Sam was up on the stage at the ULI meeting. There were 6,000 people in the audience, and he was being interviewed. And they said, this is like, we were just coming out of the 08-09 crash. And the interviewer asked Sam, he said, Sam, if you were looking at new projects today, what kind of hurdle rate would you be looking at? A hurdle rate is the IRR. What kind of hurdle rate would you be looking at to make assessment? He says, look, all you guys out here, he'd be pointing to the whole ULI. He says, and this is what he said, he says, you're all full of shit. He says, you never made an IRR in your life. he said, it's a joke. And well, the place went hysterical. Because he was like Donald Trump at the moment. I mean, he told the truth. And the point is that there's a lot more reality today. But I want you to know that the survivors of the real estate industry are past 2008 now. There's too much reality now. It's back to why banks aren't easily lending money. They're being too careful. But, so, in 1990, the S&L industry collapsed. And that was a traumatic disaster to the financial structure of the United States. Hundreds and hundreds of banks went belly up. You know, back to the too big to fail. Well, actually, in the early 90s, we proved that you can be too big, you can't fail. And so what happened was, since S&Ls had most of their money in real estate, there were thousands and thousands of projects just collapsed and got turned back into the bank and the banks then, the government said, we got to get rid of all this land, and they formed the RTC, which is the Resolution Trust Corporation. And they became the broker of all this government land. And Wall Street, at that point, the capital markets of investment banking houses, had not ever participated in real estate development before. It was in the history of the banking industry. Wall Street was interested in office buildings and shopping centers, but not land development and not investment development. But when Wall Street saw how cheap they can buy these projects, they formed what they called opportunity funds. And an opportunity fund was set up just to do that, to go out and find opportunities. But what they didn't have inside Goldman Sachs and Morgan and all of these investment, there were about 50 opportunity funds that were created within a year. Billions and billions buying up these opportunities. They didn't have any real estate intelligence inside the banks. So they called Tony Trella and the likes of me. And I did tons of due diligence work for them for 3 or 4 years. They kept me so busy, the investment banking houses, until they woke up one day and they said, why are we paying this guy Tony Trella so much money? This is crazy. We should have that kind of intellect inside this company. So they said, we're going to go out and hire real estate young people. And around 1995, 96, 97, all of a sudden, Tony Trella was getting more phone calls from them. Why? Because they built real estate departments inside the investment banking houses, like I told you before. That was what they learned about. When we be in this business, we have to have our own people doing this stuff. Not that they didn't like what I was doing, except that I was expensive. Hey, listen, when you work as long as I did, as hard as I did, you're entitled to what you think you're worth. And the only person who knows what you're worth is you. And they have to take a leap of faith sometimes to see that I'm not, you know, I'm not bullshitting them, that I really am. And once they learn how good I am, then it's like, don't go work for anybody else, work only for us. So it has a crazy split. Anyway, because I want to get into some Q&As. Same thing, go, no go, diligence. Same kind of thing's got to be done for office. Oh, back here. Capital markets. Look at this. Large banks, regional banks. These are all the places you can land. Investment bankers, public and private equity funds, hedge funds, opportunity funds, family office. You know what family office is? That's wealthy families that have consultants investing their money. Insurance companies, pension funds, federal and state subsidy financing, tax incremental funds, tips, community development districts, we have those in Florida, public partnerships, public companies, equity capital. Those are all the different pieces of the capital markets. There's money available in all those places. I told you it's a complicated industry. These are all the different kind of consultants there are. Now, this doesn't mean you would qualify for a lot of these lines, but you're going to have to work with or be one of these people if you want to be in a consulting business. Market research, financial advisor, financial broker, entitlement advisor, lobbyist, surveyors, transaction attorneys, entitlement attorneys. You read it, you can see all the different subjects. All of these could possibly be involved in some due diligence and that go, no-go decision. And that's the end of that. Before we go into general questions, anything about this particular section that you want to ask any dialogue, ask any questions?
And that last sheet you just showed, you had
Yeah.
all those titles there, I guess you could call them. Under landscape planner, did you, in your experience in your large communities you built, did you have, was there anyone between the ownership side and the landscape architect that you hired on your side? Because you may not have known what the landscape architect was talking about. So you needed someone to like decipher that for you? Or was he able to communicate that to you?
It's a little bit of both. But the point is that there's a lot of things I don't know about it either. I don't know what a botanist is going to do.
Right.
I mean, traffic specialists, what do I know? Okay. So you have to, here's that leap of faith. You got to count, like the guy says, he says, look, I'm a licensed landscape architect. He says, I plan landscaping. Now, he can't be of any value until this guy finishes. I mean, until we lay out the streets and the infrastructure and you know, what we do, and the civil engineer has put his blessings on how the dirt's going to be and everything, that's when he can come in and start saying, okay, this road turns this way, and I think you ought to have some kind of visual landscaping of this type here. This is going to go over here and everything. This particular road is too long. We can break this up with some kind of canopy tree. We can do this, we can do that. They get down into all those different details.
Right.
Okay. And then they cost it out. All right, what is that going to cost me? Okay, and you know, how much is it going to cost me to go to a nursery and buy all those trees?
Yeah.
I mean, we had so many trees in Markborough needed. We had our own tree farms.
Right.
I mean, we grew thousands and thousands of trees all over the United States for our future projects. So that was the cheapest thing for us to do, was to be in the nursery business for ourselves.
Who made that decision?
Me.
You did? Did you get guidance from the LAs to do that? From the landscape architects? From your other consultants?
Well, let me back up. When I was doing projects in Houston, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or Austin, Texas, and I had projects in those three cities, you can only deal with what nature lets you deal with there. You can't bring a coconut palm tree there, okay? I'm being facetious. But the point is that you're guided by people who work for you there, who are Dallas. In other words, I had almost 1,000 employees in 1992. I only had 6 people in my headquarters. 6, including me. Everything else was out in the field in the operating divisions. My general managers, my general manager of Houston, my general manager of Austin, my general manager of Phoenix, they ran their own companies. They had what they needed locally. Because architecture is local, landscaping is local, botany is local, hydrology is local. They're the ones that hired all those people for our projects in those cities, not me. I was the senior executive to guide the company. If I allowed myself to get involved in those decisions, I would have been a disaster. That was not why I was there. So, but it's a good question. But it's always a local thing. Anything else about this go? But you all know now where you're going to go get jobs, right? All right.
I got a question.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the development business is more of you have to kind of be an optimist. And if I was not an optimist and I was a pessimist, I might go work for a financial institution because I'm guarding against that optimism that maybe the developer had. Is that, would you look at your own personality and say, hey, I'm more of an optimist, maybe I should be on this side, I'm more of a pessimist, maybe I should be on this side?
Yeah, that's a great point. We are. That's why we're the last, I said before, developers and builders are the last people to jump on change because we hate change. I go in as consulting sometimes to home builders and and they want, maybe they're thinking about doing a new project or something. And I said, okay, well, maybe design any new housing for this project. Oh, no, I'm just going to use the plans I used over there. We call that shelf product. I said, don't you think it's time to get rid of that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that you've been building for 18 years? Don't you think the market is wise to you now that this is the same house that doesn't work anymore? Oh, I don't want to hire an architect. You got to go through all that planning. Then I got to go into the city and I got to get the plans approved and I got to do this and I got to do that. I got it all worked out. Yeah, okay. So there aren't many people like that. Well, there are. I think that in the housing business in America, let's talk about housing. During the great boom of the American dream that we talked about earlier today, when we hit our peak in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was very common on an annual basis for the United States to build about 1,200,000 homes a year. I showed you how the population was booming, how we had a shortage of housing, a whole bunch of things. And we built an industry, infrastructure-wise, to build that many houses. We didn't build a lot of multifamily then, that came later. But even when townhouses became more popular and condominiums, flats on top of flats became more common, particularly outside of Florida, we built less single-family detached housing, but the total number was 1 million, 1.2 million, we even hit 1.7 million once. So we had an industry of contractors, drywall, plumbers, electricians, you name it. The carpet companies built factories to accommodate so much carpeting a year. The guys that make drywall had factories for so much drywall and so forth. So in 2005, 2006, graduate should do. In 2005 and 2006, we hit our peak for this millennium. We built 1,300,000 houses in 2006. Rocking and rolling. I mean, everybody was buying houses because we didn't know what was going on behind the scenes with subprime mortgages and all that stuff. So, I remember going to get my hair cut one day, and the gal that cuts my hair says, "I bought 2 houses last night." And I said, "You what?" I said, "Actually, we went to buy one. My husband and I had $25,000 to invest, and they showed us how we could buy 2. And this is how crazy the market was. I mean, this was 2005, 2006. About half your age, I guess, we both. But you know, so we so overbuilt. And then when the bottom collapsed because most of these people couldn't afford these houses, and there were no buyers. I mean, who was going to take all these houses off the hands of all these crazy investors? And there wasn't enough people to rent them up. So they were all being foreclosed and the banks were rolling them in foreclosures, and you've all heard about it. You might have been part of the great foreclosure fiasco that went on for 3 or 4 years. Corruption, crimes, I mean, it was just out of control. Wall Street covering their asses and making things up and getting bailed out by the government. I mean, it was just, America was in a very dark place. Very dark place. And it's horrifying to hear that after all these years, no one's going to jail. No one. People lost life savings, people lost everything, and were tricked, and so forth. Anyway, so normally in the history of housing since World War II, recessions last about 6 months to a year. And then good old housing comes marching back, scoops up the economy, and gets us back on the right path again. And so the government and the economists always look to the housing industry to lead us out of the recession. And that's what they did in 2009 and 2010. If we can just hang on, housing will do its magic again. We got all these new people in the country. We got 3 million people adding to this country every year, and the demand is going to build up, and it's going to explode. I'll send you a copy when I give you of an article I wrote for Urban Land magazine about this very subject. It was written in 2010, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I just read this article again for the first time in about 3 years, and damn, I was right. I mean, I'm glad I was right in Urban Land magazine because I'm so involved in the ULI, my God. But I was right. I almost predicted everything that wasn't going to happen. I had friends calling me from around the country saying, "What are you doing to us? You're so pessimistic." I mean, no, I wasn't pessimistic. I was dealing with reality because I was a consultant. I didn't have anything at risk personally in this collapse. I'm sitting there. I'm in fairly good financial condition personally. I'm not the richest guy in the world, but I'm paying my bills, and I'm not worried about anything. It's just my wife and I. My kids are long gone and everything, and I'm saying, this is the real world. It's not going to come back. There's no basis for it to come back. Well, here it is, 2015. We're not going to build 450,000 houses this year. We haven't built more than 475,000 houses a year since 2007. We're going on 8 years, 9 years. So what happened to the great housing springback? That's the springback. That's it. It's not going to get any better than this in the housing business. If you're a public builder, you better find something else to do. If you're a home builder, I mean, there's just the pie is just so big. So where did it all go? We're still getting 2.5, 3 million people a year into this country. Well, people like you, I know you've heard your name kicked around forever, the millennials, you do think differently. Because you think differently for a number of reasons, and I'll tell you why you think differently, because you may not even know why you think differently. But consciously or unconsciously, you watched all these people suffer in the last 6, 7, 8 years with foreclosures, and hear all the horror stories. I bet you there's not a person in this room who didn't have a relative or friend who lost their home to foreclosure. Or close to it. It touched everybody. And then the unemployment, people without jobs, no hope, no anything. So, new people, new generations say, you know what? I'm not so quick to go after the American dream. That American dream that my father and mother went, and my grandparents went after, it's not so appealing anymore. I mean, I was sitting in a focus group a number of years ago. It was young people, and they were asking them, it was about a project in the suburbs of Atlanta, actually. And they said, would you move out here and everything? And this one guy, he's about 25, 28 years old. He says, you know, my father got in his car every day, drove an hour and a half to work, came home an hour and a half at night. We never ate dinner together. He said our only time together was Saturday and Sunday, and I was usually running around doing things we couldn't do all week. He made that sacrifice, my mother made that sacrifice, so I can live in a place that was just horribly boring. That all it was streets and streets and streets of houses with nothing else to do. He said, I don't want to live like that. I don't want my kids to live like that. Now, that in itself is not perfect market research, but to me, it spoke volumes. Volumes. Because people say, you know, I don't need 2,400 square feet. If I can get a 1,400 or 1,600 square foot, nice space, nice environment, condo or townhouse that's 1,800 feet high, I'll be more than willing to live like that if I can go to work in 15 minutes, or I can walk to 10 restaurants, or I can do this. I get it. I get it. It makes a lot of sense. So, what's booming in the building business? Rentals. And by the way, here's a new creeping statistic that's becoming part of the landscape. 1 out of every 9 single-family homes in America is now rented. 1 out of 9 is rented. That is a whole new phenomenon, going back to pre-World War II, because that's the way it used to be. We went up to 69% ownership in 2007. 69%. Remember I told you it was 35% pre-World War II. We went up to 69%. It was a phony number. We're down to 63 now. Some demographers said we're going to go under 60 in the next 10 years. But where are people living? People are renting. Or they're renting single-family houses, new and old. I know builders right now, small builders, that are building single-family houses for rental investors. They don't even care if they ever sell them to the outside world. They're going to sell them to the investor the day they get their permit, their CO, and they're going to, and the houses are going to be put on the market. I know 2 guys who are master plan, major land developers, are seriously considering right now a master plan community of only renters. Only renters. Yeah.
I heard that REITs and other large organizations, with the prices of single family and foreclosure and such, they're actually buying them up and running them as a portfolio now, where that hasn't been done ever before.
No, it's not REITs, by the way, they're funds.
No, okay,
Yeah.
funds.
Yes, Blackstone owns 50,000 houses. Colony owns 80,000 houses. These are funds. And they have put in place, I couldn't believe they could do this. Tell you, I'm very pessimistic because I said, how do you manage this? You know, if I was an investor in multifamily rental, and I went and bought a 400-unit apartment complex on 30 acres of land, I've got one manager there, I've got a rental manager, and I got a maintenance man, and it's all there. What if I have 400 houses spread across the whole town of Pompano? How do I take care of all those houses?
Wow,
Huh?
it's a lot of landscapers.
Well, and not only that, but somebody's got to be available 24/7 to pick up broken pipe. You know, the air conditioner's not working and everything. You know, they worked it out. There's a whole industry now of property management people that do nothing but support these funds.
Really?
Mhm. Now, the question is, what are they going to do with these houses? They don't know. Because, remember their 5-year horizon?
Yeah.
They may like the cash flow so much that they may go past the 5-year horizon. They might say, you know what? We're going to skip this one. We don't know yet. But if they turn, if they say, we got to get out of these houses, look what that's going to do to the housing business when it gets flooded with these houses.
I mean, construction.
Yeah.
I want to jump off topic a little bit. Your quote at the ULI conference about the social barriers in the gay communities, how we live here, you guys can't get in, kind of had me thinking. I watched a movie a while back. Some of you might have seen this. It was a Super Mario Brothers a long time ago, and they had the low class, they had the high class, and the low class were all like, you know, bad people, just the most horrible image you present. And the high class lived in a bubble, and everybody lived outside looking in. They couldn't get in. So just watching the presentation on the technology just had me thinking of these new master plan communities and cities, and with the new advancements of technology, what is your opinion? How does that, you know, from what I see today, the middle class is struggling. And I always felt that in the future, there's not going to be middle class. And that movie kind of ties it together, and everything that I'm seeing kind of justifies it. So what is your opinion of these new master plan cities in the future, and how is that going to create social barriers for those that can't get into those new areas because of the technology and the expense of that? I mean, it's not going to be affordable for everybody to be there.
Yeah. Complicated question deserves a complicated answer. Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
We're going to another place, as I showed you. You just confirmed that. Okay. We're not going to build bedroom communities anymore. We're going to build in the Greenfield, but I told you we're going to build different kind of communities. This new one that was just announced, I just lost the name, but somebody mentioned it. What is it?
Are you talking about Tropical?
Yeah, which is a very, very high
For the
dense.
rental? That's
It's going to be rental, it's going to be for sale condos
Sunrise?
and tons and tons of office and retail. Yeah, and we have several of these projects downtown Miami right now going up, colossal projects. The rents are already too high. I mean, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you could have gotten a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo on Brickell Avenue for $1,200 a month. All in, all the amenities. Because there was thousands of empty apartments. Today, you can't afford, the people who work there can't afford to live there. So even the rentals have gotten crazy in this country. And the gap between the have and the have-nots is getting worse. It isn't that everybody doesn't know this. Everybody knows this. The point is, no one has any answers. And has this happened before in history? Oh, absolutely. You know, among other things, I study Roman history. And the Romans had this problem in Rome. Rome back in 100 AD had 1 million people. It was one of the largest cities in the world. But it was very, very small. Very, very compact. The walls of Rome were, I mean, it was amazing how many people they got to live in there. They had 8-story rental apartments with, they didn't have elevators, you had to walk up and down these stairs. And they had no plumbing, you had to go down to public latrines and everything, so that's how they lived. But the point is that They couldn't afford to live in Rome, but they were Romans. So the rich in Rome gave them free bread. Gave them free bread. The rich went to Sicily and cultivated Sicily into a huge wheat-growing region. And they also did that in northern Italy, in the Po Valley, growing all this wheat for the sole purpose of giving bread to the have-nots so they don't rebel and they don't revolt. And the Romans had two things, and as long as they got these two things, they didn't revolt, not for several hundred years. They got free bread, and they got free entertainment on a continuous basis in the Colosseum. It's true. And the other thing, the racehorses and all the things they did, they got free entertainment. And it was all handed over by the wealthy, the haves. And it worked for hundreds of years. Now, I'm not saying that's what we're going to be doing. We're not going to be giving away free bread. But we're going back to a time in this country when there's this huge gap and very little middle class. Remember, these were the way the country was structured before World War II, as I told you. There was a handful of wealthy people, and the rest of the people just got by. And we became this industrial powerhouse because of the war. I mean, we were a good country, but we were nothing like after, you know, we were building 1,000 airplanes a week in the war. You know, I mean, I was watching when we attacked the last island, Okinawa, at the end of World War II in the Pacific. There were 35 aircraft carriers. We built them in 3 years. Now it takes us 20 years to build an aircraft carrier. They were building them like every 6 months. I mean, but that's what a war economy does. And so I don't know the answer. The answer is, it's obvious. You know, they're using terms in this political run about inequality. You know, what the hell does that mean? Well, you know, one candidate said, well, there's inequality for women. And other people said, well, that's nonsense. There's inequality for everybody. It's not just women. And so there's a movement taking place, very small, of raising wages in Miami. There are a lot of small people that, if they can afford it, law firms are raising salaries, accounting firms are raising salaries. So first significant salary increases in a long time. And I don't know about the rest of the country, but this has to go on. I mean, San Francisco, I was just in San Francisco, the ULI meeting. It's fantasy land. It is absolute fantasy land in San Francisco of what things cost. I mean, I have a client in Fremont, which is right outside of Silicon Valley. And a couple of years ago, the first time I went there, I said, where do I stay? He said, just call up any hotel, make your own reservations. I said, okay. So I said, new client, don't want to scare him. You know, I'll stay in a, you know, Hilton Gardens or something. So I go online and I look up Hilton Gardens and I look up whatever else they call it. It's a starting price of $169 a week. Oh, a night. Oh, that's great. $169. So I go to make a reservation. It was $440. That's, wait a minute, this is Hilton Gardens, $440. So I wound up on Holiday Inn. They were $399 a night. This is crazy. This is Silicon Valley. Now, do you think everybody there makes a lot of money? No. Google has 10 buses, a fleet of buses. They go out into the hinterland to pick up their employees and bring them to work, because they can't afford to live near the factory and the Google campus, and they can't afford transportation to get there. Is this sustainable? Come on. This is crazy. This is crazy. So where's the opportunity here? The opportunity is to keep your powder dry, which is where all the money is. And as soon as the prices start to crash, they will, then you go in and buy. That's the risk. The risk in this business, but that's the opportunity. There is always, as long as there's air to breathe and there's blood flowing through the veins, there's always opportunities. After somebody's pain is somebody's gain. Hopefully you always want to be on the gain side. Yeah.
We just came from EOI conference this weekend, during the week,
Yeah.
and one of the presenters, they were sharing that in Mexico City, they were building apartment buildings
Mhm.
with units as small as 350 square feet.
Mhm.
So in housing, there's gonna be an element.
Yeah, but a little there, a little there. I think I have to stop, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
That's in the industrial sector, that's always gonna be a safe market, it's a growing market. My thought is with the now trucks, not even drivers, would that change the logistics of where industrial warehouses or
No,
complexes
no.
are being held?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
It's just that it's gonna have to be built in a way that it can accommodate
yeah,
the truck.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was more of a location to a port, for instance, maybe because.
No, well, in all reality, there's no great in-close industrial land, new land left.
Yeah,
So it's all gonna be a drive. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, let's take about a 10-minute break. We're going to start precisely at 11:30. We're going to have lunch at noon, and then we've got a whole panel of speakers starting at 12:30, okay? So take a 5-minute, 10-minute break, kind of get yourselves good set and ready to go.
Oh, really?
So we're gonna have to spend about $20,000 to $3,000 by the end of this semester. I'm not sure what. Get together. Well, once we go, I think I'm going to work once we release after that. I never talked about what we can do with the association. We'll have a meeting this week or next.
So what's going to exist? That is existing.
Good, that's what I'm in for. Good. Yeah. I probably complicated it more for you now.
Yeah. Well, that's a good to the
Well, it'll cutting to the chase. It depends where the farm is. Many parts of because they feel that the more we cut down on farming, the more that food will become more expensive. So, and then there's people who want to see things where they are, they don't want to change. So the key there is be in an area to be in an area or a place that will fight you. But don't waste your time and energy in an area that there's no way they're ever going to approve you developing farm. It's like South Dade, the line in the sand. no more cutting asphalt.
You know, just chilling.
That's what I meant to get.
No, I would say, yeah.